Hi everyone. This is a close reading and summary of the Tao Te Ching chapters 4, 5, and 6. The version I have on the screen here is the translation by Paul Lin and the commentary by Wang Bi. I will include a link to that in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump into chapter 4. And Lao Tzu says, "The Tao is empty, used, yet never filled. It is deep, like the forefather of all things." So to better understand the Tao Te Ching, I like to refer to different translations, and so at this time I'm going to refer to Stephen Mitchell's version right here. And what he does in these first two lines is he says, "The Tao is like a well, used but never used up. It is like the eternal void filled with infinite possibilities." And so the picture you get here of a well should be helpful. As you draw the water out of the well, the water down below is replaced with more water, right? It's in the same way or similar way, the Tao, this eternal source of energy, is inexhaustible. You can't ever draw it down completely. So he continues, Lao Tzu continues, it dulls sharpness and sorts tangles, blends with the light, becoming one with the dust. I take that as meaning it has the power to change the world. And yet, he says, it's so serene as if it hardly existed, meaning it's so deep, it's so subtle, it doesn't even seem to exist, yet it has this power to change the world. He continues, I do not know whose son it is, it seems to have preceded God. Now, this word for God here, I'm just referring now to the Ames and Hall version. Highly recommend this philosophical translation of the Tao Te Ching. In place of that word for God, they have ancestral gods instead. And so perhaps what we mean here is lesser beings. So in any ways, whatever this thing is, the Tao preceded those things. It's greater than those things. So the source of all things, the source of all power to change the world, and even the ancestral gods, is this Tao, this inexhaustible source of energy. Okay, moving on to chapter 5. He says, without kindness, heaven and earth treat all things as straw dogs. Without kindness, the sage treats the people as straw dogs. Now, this word kindness can throw you off. Perhaps what he means here is without preference instead, or prejudice or bias. And so looking at the Ames Hall version, it seems like he says here in the first line, the heavens and the earth are not partial to institutional morality. And so if you read it as the Tao Te Ching as a critique of Confucian philosophy, which was a very rigid, austere curriculum, then what he's saying here is that this institutional morality that Confucius was teaching was a sort of false value system. Heaven and earth doesn't care for things like that. It treats all things as equal. It doesn't elevate any particular person or individual, a sage or a leader above everybody else, and so treats them all equally like straw dogs. And in the commentary, actually in the commentary of the Ames and Hall version, they mention that straw dogs were actually artificial relics or sacrificial artifacts that were used in the culture. And so these had their use, but they were abandoned, not too important but not too important to put an undue emphasis on them. And so he says, without kindness, the sage treats people as straw dogs in their place equally, right? The next line says, the space between heaven and earth is a vacuum like a bellows, emptied but inexhaustible. The more it moves, the more it yields. And here we get the imagery of the idea of emptiness, which will come back again throughout the Tao Te Ching. This idea of emptiness is important because power rests in emptiness. And so this picture of this bellows is a system of air pockets that are used and collapsed in order to blow air. So what we value this, and the value or the importance of the bellows exists in its very emptiness. And yet the Tao is even more than a set of bellows. It is inexhaustible. He says, too much talk often brings exhaustion. Is it not better to keep to the middle path? And so the middle path here, you're straying too far to the right or to the left, or doing too much, exerting yourself too much or too little. it seems like the virtue for Lao Tzu is right down the middle. This is the virtue of Wu Wei, or non-action. Moving on to chapter 6, very short one. The valley spirit never dies. It is called the mystic female, the door of the mystic female. It is the root of heaven and earth. Being interminable and seeming to endure, it can be used without toil. So here again we see this feminine imagery, and we're going to see this throughout the Tao Te Ching. We're going to see this idea that power exists in the feminine. This is not to discount the male. Of course, we talked about before the yin and the yang, the complementary pairing, the male and the female, they're both essential, but for whatever reason, Lao Tzu emphasizes the feminine throughout the Tao Te Ching. And so here you have the valley spirit, or as Ames and Hall calls it, the life force of the valley never dies. Mitchell calls it the great mother. So it is called the mystic female. Ames and Hall call it the dark female. The door of the mystic female is the root of heaven and earth, and it is inexhaustible. So it endures, it can be used without toil, it never ends. The commentary down below says, therefore it seems to exist endlessly and nothing is left incomplete. It functions without effort, therefore it is used without toil. Okay, I hope you found that helpful.